Hi, and welcome to He Has Answers, a completely free online ministry resource that, while still very much under construction, contains more than enough information to help you come to know the God who made you, knows you, loves you, and whom wants you to come and know Him so you may be saved and have everlasting life. In this series of videos, we'll be reading through a downloadable PDF file of an unfinished free ebook titled He Is, the Truth that God Exists, and the Thorough Investigation of Undeniable Proofs, so that you can see that beyond a reasonable doubt, God is real and the Holy Bible is His Word. If you'd like a copy of this PDF file for yourself, it can be downloaded here by right-clicking this link and saving the link as is in a folder on your own personal computer or even in your mobile device. Now let's begin. Hi, and welcome back to the reading of He Is. One benefit of being able to listen to audio is that you can still follow along with this message even while carrying on with whatever else you might be doing. Let's pray. God, please give me a soft and humble heart as I listen. Please open my eyes and my ears and change my spirit so I may know you and worship you in spirit and in truth. Part 1. God must exist. Scientists believe the universe had a beginning. One of the greatest revelations of the 20th century came with our arrival at the understanding that space, time, and matter had a simultaneous origin at a finite point in the history of our universe. This arises out of what cosmologists call the initial singularity. Initial singularity refers to the single point where all mass and space-time of the universe was infinitely condensed before quantum fluctuations acted upon it, causing it to explosively expand into all that exists today. This discovery was an outcome from Dr. Albert Einstein's theories of special and general relativity at the beginning of that century. At first, this really ruffled the feathers of the scientific community because they were convinced of an eternal and infinite universe without a beginning. But as research continued, it became inarguable that surely the universe as we know it had once been non-existent. We've coined this expansion from the initial singularity the Big Bang Theory, although it's properly referred to as the Standard Model of Cosmology. Allegedly, astronomer Dr. Fred Hoyle condescendingly called the theory the Big Bang during a BBC radio broadcast in 1949 as an insult to the idea that nothing exploded into everything, when he favored the alternative steady state model where the universe did not have a beginning. The punchy phrase stuck. Origin of the name aside, friend, here's the irony. There is no standard for the Standard Model of Cosmology. There are many various theories and ideas which revolve around the prime notion that the universe expanded into existence from a single point. And there is to some extent a general consensus about what ideas are most likely correct. But there is also much debate and confusion about the specifics revolving around the whole process. Most notably, how it all even began. When the majority of people in our society look to scientific theorists as the arbiters of truth in regards to the explanation of the natural world around them, this should really shake their confidence to the core. We're all taught in school that all the matter in the universe and even time itself was packed into a single and nearly infinitely dense spot, and then suddenly, for unknown reasons, began to explosively and rapidly expand and continue on into the ordered and functioning universe we now reside and survive in. Doesn't that sound a little far-fetched to you? Worse is this. It still does not explain first cause. Our scientists themselves tell us that matter is not eternal or infinite. This is presented in the law of conservation of matter, and this relates to the same law of conservation for both energy and mass. Matter has an end and thus could only have had a beginning through some type of creation. That's just the way it goes. If something has an end, it can't be eternal or infinite, and thus had a beginning. Where did the ball we spoke of earlier come from? And who or what got that ball rolling? Their answer? Quantum mathematicians wish to believe that back before there was that matter, back when there was absolutely nothing, there was still the physical property of gravity. And they've done the math, they've run the numbers, and their equations have determined, in essence, that nothing plus gravity equals everything. How convenient. What's truly convenient is how quantum mathematics works. It revolves around explaining quantum mechanics, and that revolves around states that change and are in constant flux. Now, I admit, friend, that this is way above me, but for starters, that doesn't mean I'm wrong or trying to mislead you to substantiate my position. Secondly, far more intelligent people than I have warned that although the principles are reliable, the interpretation and use of quantum mathematics can be greatly forced to arrive at one's desirable conclusion. Case in point, theoretical physicist and cosmologist Dr. Lawrence Krauss has been known to wear a shirt advertising that 2 plus 2 equals 5 for extremely large values of 2, whilst attacking the idea of classical logic, the very logic which will help us arrive at absolute truth. Once again, we see an attack on truth and logic and a sort of quasi-relativism, only here applied to mathematics. Whether the number is 2, 2,000, or 2 million, 2 plus 2 only ever equals 4. And this is the sort of mind at the helm of quantum mathematics as it is used to aid in the discovery of our universe's origin. This is the sort of individual influencing what you are told is truth. Need I say more? Unfortunately, for the sake of our discussion revolving around the cosmological argument, I must. In 2012, another theoretical physicist and cosmologist, the famed Dr. Stephen Hawking, brazenly denied his creator when he wrote in The Grand Design, quote, "Because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. Spontaneous creation is the reason there is something rather than nothing, why the universe exists, why we exist." End quote. Quite an assertion, isn't it? But it begs the question, where did gravity come from? Why was there the physical property of gravity acting upon this nothingness? Once more, this explanation, which so obviously seeks to sidestep the existence and necessity of God, still requires a first cause. Furthermore, friend, as you ponder Hawking's declaration, do you wonder how gravity worked in such a fashion? How it was able to so specifically and exactly and expertly bring about the unfolding of all matter in space and time in so perfect a way that we abide in a fully functional universe in spite of the claim to randomness? Should we really believe that first try, gravity randomly got it right? Should we truly adhere to the thought that the wonder and complexity we witness daily is simply the lowest common denominator and automatic result of gravity acting upon nothingness? I think we can both agree that this is quite a stretch for our imagination. Somehow the cosmos began because of an orderly, physical law we call gravity, and it continues and functions because of further orderly physical laws. And they somehow came into existence once the ball got rolling. Really? At best, the naturalist must conclude that gravity had been programmed or designed to have this effect. But even if this is really how things began, designed by whom? It should be clear to you, friend, that apart from God, the matter for the ball and its starting to roll seems rather unlikely. Impossible, actually. Accordingly, when Carl Sagan began his classic television show Cosmos, recently revived by fellow astrophysicist Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson with the line, "The cosmos is all there is," he was gravely mistaken. Nature and the order observed by science within it needs an explanation that is above and beyond nature itself. Chaos and chance cannot account for such orderly behavior, and certainly provide no reason for the initial creation of infinitely dense matter, space, and time via gravity acting on nothing. Nor does it account for the force of gravity itself, which it also couldn't be responsible for either. Unbelievably, scientists, with their naturalist bent, seeing this massive problem with gravity somehow existing in the beginning, are theorizing that perhaps no physical laws existed in the beginning and none were required, but that all came into existence as the Big Bang began. Another theory is that the laws functioned in radically different ways than we know today. Basically, just as a person stuck in a mindset will argue, well, who made God? We have people who, when confronted by their own theories which necessitate a creator, simply push their naturalist source of first cause farther and farther back. Here's the catch. If the laws existed, God was required to bring them into existence, for they are far more than merely nothing. If the laws didn't exist beforehand, it's because God never required them to act on the matter he created, and he didn't require natural forces to aid him in supernaturally constructing the universe with that matter. Interestingly, a supernatural and spontaneous creation is exactly what many believers in God and Jesus Christ adhere to. Friend, if it's dawning on you that randomness, chaos, and pure chance are clearly not the reason behind the ordered universe we see, you are not alone. As the scientific community has learned more and more about the delicate balance between natural physical forces, laws, they've looked hard for a way to explain how such could come about apart from the direct action of an infinitely powerful and wise being such as God. This has to do not only with how the laws in the universe function now, or even how they had to function as galaxies were being formed, but even how the initial expansion and rate, the beginning of the Big Bang, could occur precisely for all to be. That's because they now know that if the Bang had happened any other way, the universe we have wouldn't exist. So one theory that has surfaced, put plainly, is that our universe is held in a constant state of flux that has gone on for eternity. Researchers say that our expanding universe will slow down to the point where it begins to contract in on itself. The universe will collapse back into a singularity and then rebound in a universe-creating explosion once more. The theory is that this has been going on forever and ever like a bouncing ball that will never cease. But we know already that there is no such thing as perpetual motion where something can go on forever without external energy input. Like a ball that has forces acting upon it which cause it to slow in its bounce and finally settle upon the floor, so too would a bouncing universe. Even if there was a way around this via the abuse of quantum mathematics, which they're already working on, this still doesn't explain how it all began and where the matter or the physical laws originally came from. It only pushes off the question of where our universe came from to another point in time. Furthermore, if the laws of physics were changing with every new Big Bang, so we'd finally, by chance, end up with a livable universe like the one we have now, why by randomness would the universe be able to collapse on itself and still have the energy and functionality necessary for it to rebound again? Supposed indefinite rebounding is even more of a problem if the physical laws aren't constant, because they'd never get the same beneficial universe-creating result twice. And if something can stop, it's not infinite. This theory is therefore not our answer. Next, we have the theory that we are one universe among an innumerable number of other universes, the multiverse theory. One major purpose of the multiverse theory is to answer how we can have an existent universe where all of the natural forces work together so wonderfully for us to exist at all. Recognizing that the mathematical probability of this all coming together by chance alone is a statistical impossibility, they conjecture that there must be an enormous number of universes in existence to counter that infinitesimal statistical percentage in order that at least one universe with such perfect properties has come to be. To put it plainly, The vast majority of these universes have their laws of physics improperly tuned, and nothing can function and life cannot exist. They believe this because they admit that randomness should result in chaos. But amidst all these random outcomes, they say there is our universe and perhaps a few others where the laws function enough in this just so fashion. So this would explain why we live in a complex and functioning universe. But yet again, it says nothing for where the energy and physical forces came from initially for everything to be. There are other theories, of course, and other explanations, but they all end the same. They dash themselves upon the rock of the first cause. Regardless of the aggrandizement of their theories, they all arrive at the same place. Even the 2011 Nobel Prize winner for physics, Dr. Alex Filipenko, an American astrophysicist who was part of the team which discovered that our universe is accelerating, which implies that something called dark energy must exist, admits that they do not know where the laws of physics have come from. Even more so, he's not sure they'll ever know. When I think of these researchers forcing invented formulas into equations so that God as first cause does not have to be a part of reality, all I can think of is the old saying, you can't fit a round peg in a square hole. It seems clear that they are hoping that through the abuse of quantum mathematics and smashing the numbers together as they desire, they will be able to make them say anything, just as long as they don't conclude that God is the sovereign over all creation. Friend, if ever there was a time to apply Occam's razor, surely this would be it, wouldn't it? I truly hope that as you're reading this, you fully appreciate the great danger that arises out of an investigation into our origin done solely with a naturalistic bias. I mean, think of the gravity of our mortal and spiritual situation and our need for God and the complete delusion that He isn't required for our existence as the infinite first cause, and how that dulls our inclination to even seek Him out. The truth is that there is something shocking and disturbing about what is called science in lieu of our eternal destination. And as already mentioned in philosophical naturalism, we'll be discussing this later at greater length. For now, something that is interesting is that from time to time, despite the modern scientific method being so naturalistic, it leads very notable scientists to believe not only that God's existence is a possibility, but a probability, and perhaps even a necessity. After 17 years working on a grand unified theory to reconcile all we know from the fields of cosmology and particle theory, an atheistic mathematical physicist who gave little thought to questions of theology came to two startling conclusions. God exists, and that it is not only possible but likely that every human being that has ever existed will be resurrected from the dead. This conclusion came from Dr. Frank J. Tipler, and he claims he arrived at the proof of God's existence and our immortality, quote, in exactly the same way physicists calculate the properties of the electron, end quote. This can be read about in his published book, The Physics of Immortality. Although Tipler has been criticized for this work being pseudoscience, he's certainly not alone. Famed theoretical physicist Dr. Michio Kaku, who was one of the first to author a paper on string theory in field form, also believes, like Einstein, that God exists as our creator and first cause. And there are many, many more scientists. I trust that strikes you as compelling, if not intriguing, to say the least. But what this should remind you of is the great philosophical thinkers Plato and Aristotle, who recognized God's requirement, yet did not know God. Hopefully this has helped you to understand that God is definitely necessary. He is certainly the first cause. Before our universe, there was no time, no space, and no matter. There was absolutely nothing except for God, who is eternal and infinite. But because of God and His will as creator, there is time and space and matter. This truth that there was nothing and then suddenly there was time, space, and matter has taken centuries for our greatest mathematicians and physicists to arrive at through their hampered scientific method. But just as the Bible had clearly defined that God was the prime mover long before Plato and Aristotle thought of that through their philosophizing, God's word had declared that these three properties had a beginning, and that before this there was nothing save for God himself. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 1. 1,500 years before Jesus Christ was even born, the Holy Spirit of God inspired Moses, a friend of God, to write this simplistic yet incredibly bold assertion as the opening statement to his word, the Holy Bible, in the book of Genesis, which itself in Greek means beginning. Looking closely at this awesome verse, we see that at God's initiative, the dimension of time began, hence the beginning of history. We see that from his infinite power, he created the heavens, which denotes not only the heavenly realm in which angels dwell, but also all of space, specifically the sky onwards into outer space, and certainly encapsulating the dimension of physical space as well. Lastly, he brought into existence the earth, but which, speaking in plain terms, would include all physical matter. The bringing forth into existence of time, space, and matter, which are all finite, demands that God himself, the first cause who is eternal and uncaused, be infinite and outside of space and time, as well as immaterial. He must be pre-existing into infinity, self-sustaining in infinite power. He must be of great enough intellect to design all that we see, which functions as masterfully as it does, and being infinite in any other trait, it is unavoidable that he be infinite in wisdom as well. He would not require matter for creation, and the idea of a greater God being necessary to have brought him into existence is logically fallacious because he's already infinite. If he were simply older than the universe and of far greater power than what was required to create it, not only would he himself require a creator, but he'd also not be the God of the Holy Bible. By this reasoning, you will soon see that we are indeed speaking of the only true God who is creator over all and who has revealed himself in the Holy Bible. The buck definitely stops with him. I also hope you now understand that this reality of God's infinitude is what makes him God. Thanks for listening to this video, and I hope that it blesses you. Please do share it with others so they may have the opportunity to understand this incredible truth. Be blessed.